Guys, my name is Gia, and today we are going to be conducting the experiment Spinning Pennies. Now, this experiment dives deeper into the concepts of physics, and through this experiment, we will understand the workings of a roller coaster. So, to start off, we will discuss Newton's first law of motion. Now, many of you may know that Isaac Newton was the one who discovered gravity. And along with this, he contributed to the field of physics in several other ways. One way was where he studied the movement of an object, and he came up with three important laws of motion, which help us to determine the future of a moving object, whether it will speed up, whether it will change direction, whether it will slow down. So that was what Isaac Newton has done. And for today's experiment, we will focus on Newton's first law of motion. So the law goes, as an object at rest or in motion will remain in that state of rest or motion until an external unbalanced force is applied on it. So this just goes to say that if a body is moving, then it will continue to move in that direction with the same speed until an external object or an external force stops it. Similarly, if an object is not moving, then it will not move unless another force is applied to it, which either pushes it, pulls it, etc. So a few examples of the first law of motion, which is also known as inertia, right? So there are two types of inertia. We have the inertia of rest, and then there's the inertia of motion. Now, dust is a great example of the inertia of rest. You may have seen that people hang carpets and then hit it with a stick to clean it. Now, the logic behind this is the inertia of rest of the dust particles. So what happens is when people hit the carpet with a stick, the carpet moves immediately, because there is an external force being applied to it directly. But because there is no direct force being applied to the dust particles, and because they are at rest, they will stay in that same position, separated from the carpet. So the carpet will swing back, but the dust particles will remain where they are. And later on, because of the force of gravity, they will fall down. So this is a great example of the inertia of rest. Another example of the inertia of rest is when you are removing a Band-Aid, you should actually rip off the Band-Aid rather than pulling it away slowly. This is so that your skin, so when you're ripping off the Band-Aid, right, it happens that your skin, it's at rest, it's not moving. So when you remove the Band-Aid, you can say that the skin lags. It doesn't move along with the Band-Aid because it doesn't have enough time to actually continue sticking to the Band-Aid and move along with it. That's why when you rip off a Band-Aid, it hurts way less. In opposition, if you end up pulling the Band-Aid away slowly, then your skin has enough time to be pulled away with the Band-Aid, and because of that, a lot more pain is induced. So that's a life hack as well. Rip away your Band-Aids and do not pull them away slowly. Now, as far as inertia of motion goes, a perfect example for this is when we are sitting in a car and suddenly the brakes are applied. The car stops where it is, but our body, it lunges forward. We move forward. That's because our body has inertia of motion. When we apply the brakes, it's being applied directly to the car, and that's why the car stops. There's a force being applied to the car, but there's no force being applied to our body, which will stop it. And that's why, even after the car stops moving, we continue to move because our body has inertia of motion. And that also explains the importance of seat belts. So please remember to wear your seatbelt, because the seatbelt acts as that external force to stop your body in place and not fly out of the car. So moving forward to the main point of this experiment, right? We're trying to better understand the workings of a roller coaster. So what happens in roller coasters, right? If you've seen the big ones with the loops, have you ever wondered why the roller coaster is actually able to complete the loop rather than going backwards or hanging in midair, right? So these roller coasters, they are actually able to complete the whole loop because they have inertia of motion. What happens is that when a roller coaster is dropped from a great height, it goes down and its speed is actually increasing because of gravity. Gravity is pulling it down. And then once it enters the loop, there's no brakes as such, which is stopping the roller coaster. So it's going to continue to move in throughout the whole loop and across the whole track until any brakes are applied. So if you have ever sat in a super fast roller coaster, then towards the end, just as the ride is about to end, you will feel this jerk, right? That the roller coaster is kind of slowing down. It's like as if the roller coaster is applying brakes. That is in place so that the roller coaster doesn't continue to move along the track. It's very similar to cars. If there's no brakes applied to a car, then the car will continue to move in the same direction with the same high speed. Now, in today's experiment, we are going to be putting a penny in a balloon and recreating our own miniature roller coaster, where the penny is going to serve as the cart of the roller coaster, and we'll see how it continues to move even after no external force is applied to it. So the materials required for this experiment are one penny and one balloon. So the materials for this experiment, it's super simple and extremely available. One advice is try to use a balloon which has a light color so that you can see the penny moving inside the balloon. The perfect type of balloon for this are the extremely clear balloons, but if you don't have those available, then please use any balloon with a light color.
So to start off with the experiment, we are going to take our penny and put it inside the balloon. Next, we are going to blow up the balloon. Make sure that you don't inhale the penny. Blow the balloon up to this size. This size should be sufficient. Next, tie a knot to the balloon. Call an adult if you have any difficulties with this part. We want to make sure that the balloon is completely blown up and the knot is tied extremely tight so that none of the air escapes. So there we go, my balloon is tied into a knot. So if you can see the penny out here on the bottom. So what we're going to do is take your palm and hold the balloon like this. So you're kind of holding it with a palm. Make sure you have a firm grip on this. So this is how you should hold it. Make sure you don't hold it from the knot. Don't hold it like this because then the experiment won't be conducted properly. So make sure. So you take your palm, you put it out here, and you hold the balloon like this. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna tilt the penny a bit, and then we're gonna start moving the balloon around in circular motions, like this, circular motions. We're gonna do it at a high speed, and now you can see the penny inside. It's still moving, and I'm not moving the balloon anymore.
So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this experiment and have fully conducted it and also observed what exactly was going on. So some of the observations that you may have noticed is that even after we stop spinning the balloon, the penny inside, it continues to move along the inner walls of the balloon. This is very similar to a roller coaster. There's no additional force being applied to the roller coaster to stop it, and that's why it continues to move. Similarly, when we stop moving the balloon, it is our force which is in contact with the balloon because of which the balloon has stopped moving. But there is no direct force in contact with the penny. And because of this, the penny continues to move because there is practically nothing stopping it. However, eventually the penny does slow down and come to a stop, and this is because of the forces of gravity and friction. Now, these forces are not extremely powerful, because of which the penny will not stop moving immediately. And because these forces are relatively weaker, the penny will slow down eventually, right, and not immediately. Now, the explanation to this is, once again, as we discussed in earlier slides, that penny has the inertia of motion. This is very similar to roller coasters. It's also similar to our bodies when we are traveling in a car. So basically, the penny, it will continue to move until an external force is applied directly to the penny, which is putting its motion to an end. It's putting the penny to a stop, right? Again, the penny, it continues to move. It will eventually slow down and stop, and this is because of the external forces of gravity and friction. So gravity, in a gist, is the force exerted by the Earth's center to pull objects towards its center, right? Gravity is the sole purpose why we are able to walk on Earth without floating around, and gravity is also what pulls the penny down to the bottom. The other force which is slowing down the penny is friction. So friction is basically a force which occurs between two moving surfaces, and it occurs in the direction opposite to the motion. So if my two hands are the two surfaces, then if my top hand is moving forward, then friction, it will move backwards. So it's a force which acts, it resists this motion. And a very common place where you can see friction is in the tires of cars. So what happens is, after a while, if you see, then the tires of your car, they get worn down and you need to change them very often. This is because of the friction between the car and the road, right? So because there's like so much of friction being applied that your tire, it eventually wears down. And this is very similar to what's happening with the penny. The size of the penny, which is rolling on the inner wall of the balloon, there is friction between that and the inner wall of the balloon, which acts in opposition to the motion of the penny, which eventually slows it down. So just for a quick concept review, inertia is also is the common name for Newton's first law of motion. Newton has a total of 3 laws of motion, and he also discovered gravity. As we discussed, what is inertia? What is Newton's first law of motion? It is an object which will remain in the state of rest or motion until an external force is applied to it. As we saw with our penny, or as you can also see with a roller coaster or in a car, unless brakes are not applied, the car will continue to move in that same direction with the same speed. There are 2 types of inertia. There is the inertia of rest and the inertia of motion. We discussed in the beginning that the inertia of rest can be seen in dust particles on carpets. And when you hit a carpet, right, because the dust particles are at rest, they're going to continue being at rest. They're going to stand still, suspended in the air, and eventually fall down because of gravity. But again, dust particles will stay in place even after the carpet has separated because they have inertia of rest. The second type of inertia is the inertia of motion, and an example of this is roller coasters, the pennies that we just conducted the experiment with, and also cars. So just for a quick revision, in the experiment, the penny, it acts as a roller coaster, and it continues to move in circles, in loops, until an external force is applied to it. And this external force is gravity and friction, which eventually slows the penny down. So this presentation was made by me, Gia. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.